Hola, hola, ¿cómo están todos? Bienvenidos, buenos días, ya casi buenas tardes. ¿Cómo están? Buenas tardes a todos. Bienvenidos al AWS User Group Perú Conference, el primero de este tipo, y pues la segunda gran conferencia que estamos realizando ya en la historia de la comunidad. El 2019 fue la primera vez que hicimos un AWS Community Day en Lima, fue presencial y fue pues espectacular. Y les doy las gracias por estar acá, por darse el tiempo de lo que viene, que va a estar muy interesante. Yo soy Carlos Cortés y pues les voy a presentar hoy, junto con todo el equipo que conformamos en la comunidad, un montón de conocimiento, mucha diversión, muchos regalos y por supuesto mucha educación, ¿no? Vamos a aprender muchísimo acerca de la nube, de Amazon Web Services y pues vamos a aprender de los mejores. Así que primero que todo, y antes de mostrarles un poco lo que vamos a ver hoy día, muchachos, yo tengo aquí algunas personas que me han estado acompañando, que ahora se los voy a presentar también. Van a conocer la comunidad también, ¿sí? Es algo muy importante de este día. No solamente aprendizaje, charlas técnicas y demás, sino conozcan la comunidad, únanse. Y ahora les voy a explicar un poco lo que hacemos muy rápido para las personas que por primera vez se están uniendo. Y yo les voy a explicar un poco lo que hacemos. Esta comunidad nació hace 7 años y hacemos diferentes cosas desde el 2014, ¿no? Como hemos dicho, hemos hecho Community Day, hacemos carreras de Deep Racer de vez en cuando, hacemos streamings, tal vez cada semana, cada 2 semanas. El año pasado hemos hecho muchísimo, de verdad, hemos hecho muchos streams, cerca de como 50. Nunca pensábamos que podamos llegar a esa cantidad, pero pues es gracias a que el equipo ha crecido muchísimo y pues están igual, sienten esa misma pasión de hacer comunidad que yo, que Raúl, cuando iniciamos esta comunidad hace muchos años. Y van a aprender bastante de ellos, ¿no? Así que los invito a que nos puedas apoyar, que te quedes y que disfrutes de este evento. Ahora vas a conocer mucho más acerca de las cosas que nosotros hacemos. Principalmente te vas a encontrar con personas que también persiguen lo mismo, ¿no? Persiguen hacer comunidad, persiguen educar y también aprender, ¿no? Y hay muchas cosas interesantes que vas a lograr estando en esta comunidad, ¿no? Y te lo vamos a ir explicando conforme va pasando el día. Tenemos bastantes horas en las cuales vamos a estar juntos conversando y van a poder conocer al equipo también. Y justamente porque hacemos un evento de Amazon Web Services, pues sabemos que es la nube número 1. Sabemos que toda la capa gratuita que tiene, que la podemos aprovechar muy bien. Así que aquí si eres nuevo, vas a poder aprender todas estas cosas. Y si ya tienes tiempo en la nube, de seguro que también vas a aprender muchas cosas, porque ahora vamos a conversar con personas que tienen mucha experiencia, tanto en AWS o fuera de AWS, y que vienen de todas las partes del mundo y también de Perú y Latam, para que comprendamos cómo es que va y cómo es que se va desarrollando Amazon Web Services en Perú ahora en el 2020, 2021, ¿sí? Entonces, principalmente eso, y pues aprovechar en que nos sigan en las redes sociales que están por acá y que compartan el stream y que lo disfruten, ¿no? Ahora lo que voy a hacer es presentarles un poco a las personas que nos van a estar acompañando hoy en el stream y que están aquí conectadas conmigo. Los voy a sumar. Un segundo que las sumo aquí. Las voy a sumar. Está André, ¿sí? Y está Fernando. Así que los voy a sumar a ellos ahora mismo. Ay, no te escucho, André.
Hola, hola, ¿cómo están? Hola, Carlos, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo te va?
¿Qué tal, André? ¿Cómo estás? ¿Emocionado igual que yo, me imagino?
Sí, sí, claro que sí, feliz después de tantos meses coordinando, viendo los speakers, viendo los temas, viendo los obsequios, y después de un 2020 continuo de mucho contenido, pues el primer evento del 2021 creo que se viene está con fuerza ya y nada, vamos con todo.
Sí, la verdad, lo que hemos preparado para ustedes es con mucho cariño y ha demandado muchísimo esfuerzo. Prácticamente lo venimos trabajando el último cuarto del año pasado y todo lo que viene este año, que ha sido unas semanas de locura. Ahí el equipo, la sonrisa de cansancio que tiene de tantas cosas que hemos hecho, pero es para ustedes. Así que, y bueno, y lo vamos a disfrutar todos, ¿no? Una de las cosas principales que ya van a ver es diversión. O sea, justamente una de las frases que Amazon tiene, AWS tiene es have fun, ¿cierto? Después de trabajar duro, después de hacer muchas cosas, tienes que divertirte. Y este evento es para eso, para que te diviertas. Y
Y
pues,
recuerda que este evento iba a ser presencial, ¿no? Entonces quizás cuando todo se solucione, los mismos invitados, pero ya en Lima, ¿no? Presencialmente. Sería un
exactamente,
golazo.
exactamente. Exactamente. Bueno, y no solamente, André, estás aquí y vas a acompañarnos todo el día aquí, sino que también está acá con nosotros Fer, ¿no? Yo le digo Fer, él es Carlos Fernando Chicata, y es de la comunidad de Arequipa. Él tuvo la iniciativa de empezar todo esto de la comunidad también en Arequipa, y pues es el líder actual de la comunidad de Arequipa y que está junto con toda nuestra comunidad, y se los voy a presentar para que lo conozcan. Ya varios deben saber quién es, y acá está Fer. ¿Qué tal, Fer? ¿Cómo estás? Bienvenido. Es un gusto tenerte aquí. Creo que tu micro está apagado.
Ah,
Ahí
sí.
sí. ¿Qué tal?
Muy bien, muy
¿Emocionado
bien.
igual? Sí, la
Oh,
verdad
sí.
que... Dale, dale.
Oh, es que es incontrolable, pues, pensar que ya llegó el día. Entonces, qué emoción.
Sí, perfecto, te entiendo, te entiendo. Está bien. Pero ahora que estamos aquí con André, y también está Nefi, no sé si lo puedo sumar. Nefi, ¿estás listo para salir en el stream? Ahí
Claro,
estás,
claro.
¿no? ¿Qué tal? Ahí está Nefi también. Eh, y pues vamos a estar los cuatro y más personas, ¿sí? También falta Gerardo y otras personas más que faltan unirse, que durante el día van a ir conociéndolo y va a ser importante también que su participación, porque pues hay cosas interesantes que ya van a ver, ¿no? Ahora, lo más importante es iniciar, ¿no? Con esta primera parte muy interesante, que es conocer a Jeff Barr. Y pues, como todos saben, y como de repente algunos todavía no lo saben, es nuestro primer invitado y nuestro gran invitado que va a estar hablando ahora en esta primera sesión. Y nosotros estamos muy emocionados porque nos va a contar cosas interesantes y una conexión especial que tiene con Perú. Y justamente ahora, todavía estamos a unos minutos, es importante para nosotros que no solamente hablemos de tecnología, sino que también nos motivemos, ¿cierto?
Obviamente.
Claro, no solamente es todo es técnico. Entonces, justamente, una de las cosas que él hace es educar, ¿no? Entonces, eso es justamente una de las cosas principales, seguro que nos va a contar, es sorpresa, yo no sé de exactamente qué nos hablará, eso es algo interesante que vamos a tener que esperar hasta ese momento. ¿Sí?
De hecho, también es uno de nuestros objetivos, ¿no? Como comunidad, educar a más personas, generar contenido, compartir, que más gente siga aprendiendo.
Exactamente. Mucha gente está empezando en cualquier parte del aprendizaje en la que te encuentres, ¿no? Así sea, eh, estás empezando, entonces eso va a ser muy importante porque hay muchas charlas técnicas y los workshops que hemos hecho toda esta semana pasada ha servido para que las personas que estén iniciándose entiendan un poco más de lo que es las bondades de la nube, ¿no? De AWS. O sea, si vienen de otra nube, igual va a ser interesante que conozcan esta nube ahora. Y justamente, pues, lo interesante de la conversación que vamos a tener ahora con Jeff es, a veces es más simple de lo que nos parece, ¿no? Es simplemente educar, simplemente toca hacer eso. No todo es tecnología, no todo es cosas técnicas, sino que puede haber más. Y además acá en Perú creo que nos falta muchísimo eso, ¿no? Nos vamos mucho a lo técnico y nos olvidamos las bases y nos falta evangelizar. Siento que todavía tenemos que hacer muchas mejoras nosotros mismos para elevar nuestras habilidades cloud y demostrarle al mundo o al resto o a la TAM o al mundo entero que pues Perú está lleno de cosas muy importantes, muy interesantes. Y justamente este evento lo va a decir. Vamos a escuchar a muchos peruanos y peruanas sus casos de éxito y cómo van avanzando y cómo nos comparamos, por así decirlo, cómo competimos con el resto, ¿sí? Así que, sin más ni menos, yo creo que es hora de poder presentar a nuestro invitado, ¿cierto? Así que vamos a tener una pequeña conversación con él y después lo voy sumando, muchachos. Okay. Vamos a ver. Sí. Entonces, creo que ya está listo para que pueda estar con nosotros. Así que lo voy a invitar a que suba al escenario ahora mismo y vamos a conversar un poquito porque tenemos unos minutos antes de que pueda iniciar. Jeff, I think you're ready. I'm going to add you right now. to the stream. Okay, let's go. Let's do this. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Hello. Good morning from Seattle. Really happy to be here.
Finally, it comes today. We're really awesome to have you here. We're really pleased. It's a pleasure to have you here, Jeff, in Peru, at least virtually, but it's awesome to have you here and can learn from you a lot of things that you can share with us today about AWS, educating cloud computing, and most of it, maybe learn from you how simple is that, and we are not seeing that in that sense. Maybe we think it's complicated. Maybe we go in other ways, but we want to learn from you, your expertise and all your background that you have in AWS as the vice president of Amazon Web Services, as also chief evangelist. So it's a pleasure to have you. It's an honor, and I can't wait to hear you about that. And also Jeff, maybe talk about a little bit about how special Peru is for you. And in the last time we talked about just figuring out how we can do this conversation today. You talk about how you have very special connection with Peru also. So we're wondering how can it be learn from you about that. So
okay.
Furthermore,
I have a very special presentation prepared that I made especially for this event and for this audience. So I'm ready whenever you give me the go ahead.
Yeah, of course, Jeff. Please, the audience, this great Peruvian audience is for you. And please, you can start your presentation, share your screen, and
absolutely.
I hope you have a really great time here.
Awesome. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak and for the wonderful introduction. I'm so happy and so excited to be able to do this. I put a special presentation together just for this audience. I call it Learn, Apply, Share, and Repeat. So my thinking here is I'm actually not going to get very technical at all today. I really want to focus on some of the strategies and philosophies and techniques that I have used over the years to do all of these things. But I want to do it in a way that I think is going to be, I hope, inspiring and educational, with the goal of helping you to learn and to grow and to be able to do more and more and more with the skills that you build and that you acquire. So let's start in. I am so happy to be here. I really want to thank the organizers for sending out the invitation for me to appear and to present. It's actually been kind of a goal of mine to be able to come to Peru and to speak about AWS. I have a very special and very personal connection to your beautiful and your amazing country. Way back in 1979 or 1980, I was in college and I met this beautiful young woman who had just come to the United States from Peru. We started studying together and we started going out on a few dates after a little while. I got to know her. I got to know a lot about her country. I learned that she had been born in Lima. She had lived in Chiclayo and Arequipa as well. Her father was in the Air Force. He was born in Cusco. And we got married in 1982. So we're coming up on year number 39 of being married. I've really enjoyed getting to know her and to get to know your culture and your beautiful and your amazing country as well. We were last in Peru just about 2 years ago. We were in Lima. We actually went to Machu Picchu, I think probably my fourth time at Machu Picchu. And I actually climbed Huayna Picchu for, I think, maybe my first and only time. I will tell you, it was a very, very scary experience for me, but nevertheless, I did it. And sometimes there's a lesson to be had in doing something that's just maybe a little bit scary and maybe just kind of a little bit right there on the edge of your comfort zone. So these are some of the things that I would like to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about change and growth. I want to share some lessons that I've learned from life and from work. A few of the Amazon concepts that have allowed us to be creative and innovative and to invent services like AWS and Kindle and Fire TV and Amazon Prime over the years. When we were planning for this event, I really wanted to do something that was inspirational, to really say, here's some great ideas, here's some motivation, here's some ways you can move yourself into the future. And as I put this presentation together, I actually put a couple of personal challenges for you, things that are kind of think of them like exercises or homework that you might want to be able to do as a takeaway from my presentation. I always do like to hear from my audiences after the fact. You can easily find my Twitter or my LinkedIn or my Facebook online. Always feel free to connect and to send me a message if you have ideas, questions, comments. I'll always love to hear from all the audiences that I get to speak to. So let's talk a little bit about change and growth. I've been working in the tech world for a really long time. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that soon. But something I've learned is that the technology, the systems, the way that you work, the past can become very, very comfortable to you. You can just say, well, the way I'm working, the technology that I'm using, the languages, the tools, they're good enough. And maybe I'm so happy and so comfortable with them that I don't see the need to learn something new or to change. I fully understand that. I see that change and growth can sometimes be a little bit scary. And we all have our own personal growth challenges. For me, climbing Huayna Picchu was probably the scariest thing I've ever had to do in my life. There was a time I remember I was actually on these steps. I was coming back down. And I actually remember thinking, I might have less than 5 minutes to live. And that was a kind of a scary kind of a thing. But I slowly made my way down those steps, inch by inch by inch. And what I've learned over the years is that it's actually really important for us as people to really embrace change, to always say, well, here we are, this is who we are, this is what we're doing. But let's figure out a way to move a little bit forward into the future as well. It's always scary. It can sometimes be a little bit uncomfortable or painful. But in the end, it helps us to grow. And that's really, really powerful and really important. Now, I want to spend some time talking about how I got here. And I do this to kind of just present a bit of a model for how much one's career can change over the course of decades. I was born probably before most of you in 1960. And that was kind of a really interesting time because it was like the beginning of the space age. This is when the Americans and the Russians were just starting to look to the sky and say, let's put a man on the moon. And what that meant was that there was actually kind of an excitement about space and technology and computers and electronics. I was lucky enough to really pick up on that from a very, very early age. And I just remember knowing about computers probably before I was 10 years old and just thinking how interesting and how exciting they would be. In 1976, I was lucky enough to get my actual first kind of technical job. I worked at one of the first computer stores in the world. And I had this really interesting, fun job where as all the books and the information and the magazines would come to the store, it was my job to just take them out of the boxes and put them up there on the shelves for sale. That was the job. But what I actually did is I would open them up and I'd spend about half my time actually just reading about all this really interesting new technology. Now, what that meant was I was even at that very young age, I was the one who deeply understood all this technology. When customers would come into the store and they'd say, how does it do this? Or how does that work? Or can I use this and this together? Because I had done all of that studying and because I'd put that time and that energy into really understanding the industry, even though I was really young, I was the one who was able to explain all this. Now, the really interesting thing as I look at my career, I'm effectively still doing that same job as an evangelist. I work with all the different teams at Amazon. I get to learn about the new services they're building, ask them questions, read their documentation, go hands-on with these services, and then I explain it to my audience. So somehow over the course of well over 40 years, I've kind of gone in this loop and ended up where I started, which is kind of a really interesting thing to have happen to you. Spent quite a long time as a developer, as an IT consultant, went to Microsoft for a couple of years and worked on Visual Basic. I worked on Visual Studio. I worked on some very early web services. If you've been doing web services for a long time, you might remember SOAP and WSDL and UDDI. Those very early, very complicated attempts at web services. I came to Amazon at the very, very beginning of our web services work. When the first web services we put online were called the e-commerce services, where we put some XML and some SOAP APIs around the Amazon product catalog, put that out for developers and said, build something really fun and interesting and see what you can come up with. The amazing thing when we did that, this was around the middle of 2002, within about 48 hours, developers had found those services, downloaded the SDK, started building really interesting things that we hadn't thought of. And this was the first indication that we had at Amazon that building web services and making them available for developers could be a really good business for us to be in. So I joined that web services team. I very quickly found my role as an evangelist. I think it was early the next year. And since then, I've just been working my way up the company. Over the years, I was promoted to vice president about 4 years ago. Now, one interesting thing you'll see at my slide here, probably I'm sure that many of you are somewhat younger than I am, and you've kind of had some level of internet access for most of your life. The interesting thing to me is that probably like for the first half of my life, we had maybe really simple dial-up modems and simple connectivity in the late 70s, early 80s, but we then from there we graduated to email, and it was the internet is still kind of a thing that is like midlife for me. But even I remember seeing the first web browsers and thinking this is pretty exciting, and figuring out a way to get myself connected and understanding what HTML and CGI programming was all about, and just that was the new thing for its time. But I very quickly jumped in and learned enough about it to not only be conversant with it, but to be able to actually build things and to make money doing that. Along the way, I earned a degree in computer science, and then I went back to school in 2010. I earned a master's degree in communication and digital media. We'll get back to the subject of education just a little bit later. In my time, and I can say that as probably the oldest person here, formal education and degrees were very, very important. I think that we're now in a time where this may actually be changing, and really want to explore that as one of the main topics of my presentation today. Okay, so what do? I really have a few main outputs that I produce at Amazon. Back in 2004, when we're putting our plans together to start launching Amazon S3 and EC2 and SQS and all the services that you probably know about after that, I started thinking of what is a really good way to share this with a global audience. And so I launched the AWS News blog in 2004. When I first started doing this, it was just one relatively small part of what I did. And then it probably took about almost, let's say, 10 years for that to really grow into effectively just about my full-time job and the main thing that I focus on. Joined Twitter early on, been doing that since 2006. I also go into the AWS, or in the past, I would go to the AWS Video Studio. We'd set up with the lights and the cameras in the studio, and I would do interviews, and I would do What's New videos. Now that we're working from home, I do a lot of that same video work from home. Now, the lesson I've learned is that you start out on these new projects. They often start out kind of small, kind of tentative. You're not quite sure if it's going to be worthwhile or not, but you have an idea. You have a bit of a vision of where it could go if you work at it. But you have to work at these things for a long time. You do it for a long, long time. Sometimes it might be 3 years. It might be 5 years. You do that, and then suddenly everyone says, "Wow, you're suddenly really, really successful. It just happened in a minute." But the reality is, you had been actually working on that for a really long time, and no one was paying attention, and no one noticed. So the way I describe this, I say it takes a very long time to be an instant success. You have to put that work in ahead of time, and sooner or later, that hard work that you do will be recognized and will be noticed, and it will be worthwhile. But you got to put that energy in up front when no one is paying attention. So keep that in mind. All right, now I want to go through a couple of different Amazon concepts. I often speak to customers about something that we call our culture of innovation. And we like to share some of the things that have made us a success. When we talk about Amazon in the retail business, we have something that we call the flywheel. So a flywheel is basically part of any kind of a spinning machine, usually this big heavy disc that rotates to keep the machine running at a constant speed. As you put energy into that flywheel, it can go faster and faster and faster. So this is what we call the Amazon growth flywheel. And we see that as we work on improving each of these different things, it drives the next one forward, and it adds energy into the system and makes that system go faster and faster and makes things better and better. The primary elements in the Amazon flywheel are the selection, which is the number of different products in the catalog. More selection leads to a better customer experience because they have more products to choose from. The better customer experience is going to lead to additional traffic on the website, so more business ultimately. That traffic is going to also attract more vendors and merchants to sell on the platform, which in turn is going to increase the selection. So in a very straightforward way, this is how we think of how do we make our business better and better over time. Now, off to the top, you see that as we scale, we're able to get a lower cost structure because the scale itself often leads us to be able to offer lower prices. The lower prices also improve the customer experience and make the flywheel go better and faster over time. I'm going to come back to this concept in a little bit, so keep it in mind. I would like you to start thinking, though, what is your personal flywheel? What are the things that you do? How do you measure your success? What are the activities? And how are you going to make that flywheel turn faster and faster over time? Another important part of the Amazon culture we call the leadership principles. We have 14 separate leadership principles. And today I don't have time to really go into great detail on each of these. You can find these online if you would like, or we could separately do a presentation sometime about the leadership principles. But the idea here is that these are the principles that define our culture. When we are hiring new employees, we always ask them questions in terms of leadership principles. We want to understand how they like to dive deep onto a particular topic, how they like to learn. Thinking big refers to the idea that when you have a problem to solve, you say, okay, here's the problem, here's kind of the intermediate small scale solution, but what if we kind of like go far up and to the right? How big could we take this solution? So these are some of the principles that we use to guide our hiring, our employee feedback, our working vocabulary, if you will. So another question for you, what are your leadership principles? How do you think in terms of what are the ways that you choose to make your decisions, the ways that you choose to operate your work life and your personal life? Now let's talk about change and lack of change. Famously, several years ago, Someone asked Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon. They said, "So Jeff, what are the biggest changes that you see coming?" And Jeff, being a very smart person, said, "Well, changes is really interesting, and I pay attention to it, but I also pay attention for things that don't change over the long term." And then he said something that I think is very important and very profound. He said, "When you have something you know is true, even over the long term, you can afford to put a lot of energy into it." So a good example that Jeff often gives is lower prices on the Amazon site. He says customers will, any energy that we put into continuously lowering prices, customers always are going to want lower prices. So that's the fact that customers want lower prices, that's going to be true for the long term. So any investment that we can make to make our systems more efficient, our delivery more efficient and cost effective, that's true over the long term. That's worth putting a lot of energy into it. My question for you, what is a truth for you that you would hold over the long term? Now, a truth for me is the value of education. As I shared before, I earned a degree in computer science and then later went back to school to earn a degree in digital media. At first glance, you look at these and you say, okay, well, Jeff was really lucky and he got to go to these really like expensive schools. And yes, I was really lucky and I got to go to these schools. But there was also the part you don't hear is both of these degrees were earned part-time. They were earned in the evening. They were really hard won. They were in my undergraduate degree. My family was young. I was starting in my career. But I went to school from 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock at night for 4 or 5 years to earn that degree in computer science. When I earned my master's degree, again, I was working at Amazon. I was traveling a lot. I remember one particular day, I left Tokyo, Japan in the morning. I flew all day for like 14 hours. I came home, I changed. I went to school that night after having been awake for 30 plus hours. So value of education is in the earning it and in the having it. Back when I started in the tech industry, let's say when I'm back in my 20s, you'd expect every programmer to have a degree in computer science. It was kind of essential that you had that formal degree. You actually literally had that piece of paper that says, yes, this candidate has the degree in computer science. Occasionally you meet someone who is more self-taught, but you kind of would say, well, maybe that's not as good as having the degree. So as an industry, we've really valued this degree system for a very, very long time. We still do. I actually believe that we are now on the verge of this changing. I think within the last 10 years, and perhaps accelerated a bit by working from home and coronavirus and by the internet, the whole idea of education is in the middle of change. And I think this is actually all really, really good. The old educational model was very formal. You'd apply to school, you'd go to school, you'd step through this predetermined curriculum. They'd pretty much tell you, this is the set of things you have to learn, the set of things you have to do in order to earn that degree. The new model is less formal. It's self-directed. You decide that you want to learn. You pick the topics that you would like to learn about. We've gone from the physical campus, the physical classroom, to more of an online or a virtual environment. I kind of think of the old education model, the colleges, the campuses, the classrooms as effectively mass production. They are almost like a machine or a factory, and they're just turning out a whole lot of well-qualified developers, whatever subject they're teaching, but all kind of with the same basic skill set, the same orientation toward work. The new model is more like handcrafting, building things individually and by hand. Old model, it's a fixed model. It's effectively a limited duration. You go, you take the set of classes, you graduate. It's okay. Now you have your degree. You're finished. The new model should be continuous and it should be lifelong. Especially in our industry, everything changes all the time. Is it a server-based model, a serverless model? Is it containers? what languages am I using? Am I doing an agile model? Am I doing a waterfall model? All those things change. We need to make sure that we are learning, keeping up along with it. The old model, really expensive. I have 5 children. They're all graduated from traditional colleges. I can tell you for sure, I understand how expensive college actually is. The new model, it's more affordable. We've got all of this amazing online learning resources. And I love the fact that this is now making education, taking it from an exclusive model where you have to be in a certain part of the world or the country. You have to have a lot of money. You have to have this dedicated time. So it's a very exclusive model, to a more accessible model where wherever you are, whatever your resources, you've got access to really interesting ways to learn and to improve. Another interesting thing is that the old model was really one teacher and a moderate sized class. So it's one to few with effectively a limited class size. The new model, the online learning model, is one to many. There are classes with thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of students there. It's highly scalable. So we move from the campus to the desktop. This might be one of the most interesting changes that we're going to see within our society. If we looking backward a decade, looking forward the next couple of decades, this education model is really changing. Now, something I've noticed over the last year or two, there's this new teaching model I call the super teacher. So we kind of think of the teacher in the traditional classroom, bunch of desks in the classroom, the teacher's there at the front, and there might be 30, 40, 50, 100 students in the classroom. The super teachers, different model. They are setting up a studio, they are teaching online, they are reaching tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of students per year. And some of the metrics that I see are actually kind of mind-blowing. Let's look at just a few of these. Steve Brunton, he is a teacher at the University of Washington. He's a math and science teacher. You look at the view counts on his videos, and within a week or two, he's reached 5,000, 10,000 students. This was a screenshot I just took just last week after he'd released this video about mathematical regression. Within a day of launch, he'd had 3,600 views of the video. He has a very interesting teaching setup where he has a glass wall and he writes on the glass wall, but somehow the text is reversed and it all comes out looking properly. I don't actually understand how he does that. But this is a super teacher who can reach thousands of students from his studio. Or there's a deep learning class at MIT. Okay, MIT, very exclusive institution, really hard to get into, super expensive. You get in there and you know that you're among the most elite of students. But then you go online and you see that their introduction to deep learning class, a class you can clearly get a lot of value from. The video has well over 900,000 views. So clearly this is a scale out model. But even better, you go to the website you go beneath the video and it links you to the website. And it gives you this really amazing message. It says, the entire course is open sourced and available, and it gives you the website. It's on, let me look in, intro to deeplearning.com. So we go from this model of you have to go to MIT, you have to spend a lot of money, you have to go to that class, which is, maybe at the very, very biggest, maybe they're reaching 1,000, 2,000 students a year. Here we've got this amazing scale-up model where they've reached close to a million views for this class. And again, we go to the website, and that line in blue near the bottom, this to me is maybe the most important statement of the entire thing. Here we've got this really cool class on a very important leading edge topic. And what does it say? Registration is now open to all. How awesome is that? Okay. This is a topic that you know this, you're going to be able to use this to improve your job, maybe get a better job. You've got this material open and accessible to you, regardless of where you are. You don't have to apply to MIT. You don't have to fly to Massachusetts. You can just sit down at your computer and be on an equal footing with anybody anywhere in the world that wants to learn about this. There's a computer science class at Harvard University, which is just actually down the river from MIT. This introductory class was one of the first to go online at scale. It's called CS50. Again, you can see the view count there for their video. It's at well over 800,000 views. And then we go to the website, and it says 2,637,000 plus people have already enrolled for this introductory class. Again, Harvard, big, expensive, very, very elite university. But wherever you are, you can enroll for the CS50 class, and you too can take Introduction to Computer Science. I think this is awesome and amazing and just an incredibly big opportunity. So in the past, when we would look at a resume or a CV, someone would be applying for a job. You usually go to the bottom and say, okay, what schools did this person go to? What evidence do I have that they learned? And they'd say, well, I had this degree from this date, from this school, and so forth. Still good, still valid. I now see resumes where people will very honestly say, I didn't go to college, but I took this class, I took this training, I defined my own learning course, I maybe earned some certifications along the way. I think that's really awesome. I'm so impressed when someone has the energy and the focus and the ability to say, okay, I want to do this and this and this and this, and I'm going to ignore these distractions and these distractions, but I'm just going to go through this learning path, and I'm going to document it, and I'm going to effectively use all these amazing online resources to set up my own learning path, pick up my own skills. This Python course looks like well over 10 million views. My screen's a little bit far from me, so I can't see it as well as you probably can. But an online Python course, 6-hour course, not going to cost you anything to take the course. How much can you learn by sitting at your computer, taking that course, going through the exercises? I think this is just such an opportunity. So here's the challenge I leave for you. Build your education plan. So think about how you'd like to educate yourself. What would you like to learn? Go out there online. Find those resources. Think about your bridge to the future. And then really importantly, as you learn, I found that one of the most powerful things you can do as you learn something is actually go out and share it. Maybe you are going to write a blog post. Maybe you just tell a couple of your friends. Maybe you record a video. Maybe you write a book. Whatever you do, each of those little steps in your learning journey, share it. It's going to help you make sure that you know the topic well. As you, in that process of sharing, you're going to find that wherever you started, whatever bit of learning you acquired, that very active sharing is going to make you realize that you've made some great progress and to help you feel good about doing it more and more and more. It's also going to be this great message to the world that says that you are interested in this topic and that you learned enough that you're willing to share. As you do it, you're slowly going to build up that reservoir of knowledge. Use this sharing as your evidence that you've done it. Remember what I said earlier, that it takes a long time to be an instant success. Going through your education plan like this, choosing the resources, learning, sharing, this is that long time to get you to that point where you're going to be ready to be that instant success. Okay, so I talked earlier about flywheels, and I thought, okay, I might as well put my own flywheel together as well. This is what I've been doing for my entire adult life. I find something that is an interesting to me. I find the resources so that I can go about learning it. Now, I think back to like, as a child, how hard it was to find these resources. Resources back before there was an internet, you'd have to like go to a library or a bookstore or to a college campus to find these resources. Not accessible, expensive, and not always easy to even find. So much easier now. Find the resources, learn the skill, put the skill to use, and then go ahead and share it. This has been the, if there's a secret of how I've worked and achieved over the years, this is it. Sharing what I learned, be it a tweet, a video, a blog post, a podcast. Maybe it's simply an endorsement. The next time you're talking to somebody, you say, I studied this really interesting thing and it's pretty cool, and maybe you should study this as well. Just simply putting it out there to the world that you know a little bit extra special about something. Or maybe you create some code as part of learning and putting it to use. Put it out there on GitHub. Use GitHub effectively as your resume, as your evidence of what you've done. So this is the flywheel that I've come up with for me. And a challenge I would give out to you is, what does your flywheel look like? What are your activities? What do you do to make that flywheel go faster and faster? And then what do you have come out of that flywheel effectively as the evidence, as the side effects on your side? Oops. Okay. All right. So I kind of think about where we are in a world, and I don't know about you, but the last year has been really tough. It's been really challenging. A lot of the things that we used to do, as far as being able to go freely within our neighborhood, being able to go to the office, being able to socialize with friends and family, not having to think about health and safety, suddenly everything changed. It's been a really, really tough year for everyone I've talked to. At the same time, we all knew that there was kind of this new future where we could learn online, where we could maybe be connected digitally. Seems to me that we've kind of accelerated ourselves into this future, and that maybe some of these changes that we've done, the positive changes, maybe these are not temporary changes. Maybe we've had this really interesting opportunity to invent our future just a little bit ahead of time. So I think this is a great time for anybody in the technology industry. You've got some great ideas, some great skills. I think the things you're going to learn at this event today and tomorrow are going to give you some more skills and some more ideas and some inspiration. I think this is our time as technologists where we can get to do some really amazing things and help to improve the status of the world. So here's a couple kind of final thoughts for you. So much has changed for us. We saw COVID-19 come up out of nowhere. We have to deal with quarantine. We have to go work from home, some of us that are fortunate enough to be able to do that. When I think, first started talking about this event, I'm pretty sure the plan was for me to travel to Peru and present in person. I was so looking forward to that, but we had to switch, we had to pivot, and we had to go to remote events. That's okay. That's all right. We actually figured out how to do these, and we're going to figure out ways to make them better and better and better over time. So much of what we kind of thought was stable, the firm ground, it's a little bit changing right now. As programmers, the things that we thought of as constants, just those things that were fixed, some of that's now variable. With all of this, with all these challenges, I think that the world is ready for change. The world is ready for presenting opportunities to us. It's up to us to go out there and invent and solve the problems. So lots of room for innovation, and I think that people are ready for it. Okay, and with that is what I have to present today, and I believe we're going to move into some Q&A and some discussion time from here. I hope that you found this really worthwhile and interesting. I didn't go deep into any tech at all. That was 100% by intent. I wanted to kind of give you some perspective, some ideas, some thoughts, some directions for the future. So with that, let's jump into some questions and discussions, if we could.
Okay, Jeff. Wow, thank you so much. It was some inspirational talk about it. I really love the thing about you tell about the rise of the super teacher. That was awesome. And also, what really brings inspiration for me, and I think for all the people that are listening, is about the building your education plan. It's something very important that maybe most of us miss most of the time. So we don't really focus on building our path of education. We just take logs, read something, and make technical stuff, and everything not in order. So building your path for that is very important. So I would love Yeah, we were talking about all the last year about being here and being here literally in Peru. But, all the things that happen and COVID-19 and quarantine is not possible today, but maybe in the future you will come here to Peru and will be awesome to have you here and have a great conversation and great event maybe and talk about cool things about happening here in Peru and cloud computing, how make things better here.
I would love to come. My passport's ready. I can be there in 24 hours.
Okay, great. I hope it can happen soon. Okay, so we have a few questions. The first questions. I have a very special person here that is the next person is going to be here on the stage. Is Raul Lugo, is an Amazonian also, and I found the community in Peru with him working in the same company like 100 years ago, 6 years ago exactly. But it's here with me, and I would love to add to the stream if it's okay.
Sure.
Yes.
There.
The one and only.
How are you?
Hi Raul, what's up? How are you? Nervous?
Thanks.
I don't know if you're more nervous than me. Okay, so please, Raul, if you have something, I don't know if you have any questions, maybe to discuss a little bit with Jeff.
Well, Jeff. First, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really good presentation. And well, I have a question for you related to Peru and Latam. What do you think that what strength we have in Latam to that you see that can we use to be success in this tech world that we are living? What strength or advice could you give us to have this success?
Sure. So great to meet you. And I would think back to the first Amazon leadership principle, which is the customer obsession. So customer obsession really says, make sure you understand when you're building a product, make sure that you have a great understanding of who that customer is and what their needs would be. We have this really interesting model at Amazon that we call start from the customer and work backward. So what this means is that when we are building any kind of a new product, we don't start with a lab and some kind of engineers just inventing things. We always actually start from a detailed conversation with our customer, really understand who the customer is, what their problem is to be solved, and then we step backward from that into thinking, okay, what kind of thing could we build to solve those problems? And then we actually go ahead and build it. My dog is barking in the background. Hopefully you can't hear her too much, but
don't worry. So we need to focus on the customer. So
it's worked really well for us. Let's just say that. So making there's I think in the tech community sometimes there's almost this kind of at least in the earlier days for me, there were the engineers, and then there was the business people, and then there were the customers, and the engineers didn't want to go anywhere close to the customers. That's maybe an outdated model, and because it just doesn't work. The engineers have to be close to the customers and have a good understanding of who the customers are and what their needs are.
Awesome. And well, I want to add something that we need to recognize who is the customer first, because it's really hard understand who is the customer. Maybe for an enterprise, a customer is who is buying something, but for us as technical people that are behind the scenes and behind the business, maybe our users are the business users first, and also other parts of the company. So that identify who is the customer. I think it's really important also.
Sure. Now, one really interesting thing to maybe think about is that in some markets, the local market is big enough that you can say, well, if you're in the United States, for example, you can build products and say, well, that local market is so big, I can simply focus on the US, and the rest of the world, maybe I'll get to that at some point. There are other parts of the world where the local market is small, and they say, well, from the beginning, we're going to just be a global company. And it turns out that small local market can actually be a really interesting advantage. A place that comes to mind is Israel. I've been there several times for AWS, and the entire country is, I think, like 6 million people. So the local market is effectively is very tiny, but they always think, well, we're here. We can reach out to the rest of the world from where we are very easily. So kind of understanding that the whole world can be your market, I think, is worth thinking about as well.
And that's another leadership principle. Think big. We should think. Yeah. Well, it's nice to review those leadership principles with you, Jeff. Well, Carlos, we cannot listen to you.
Yeah, I was on mute. Sorry. We have a lot of questions, but actually, I'm gonna say one more because we have a schedule here. So, Andre CB22 from the chat is asking a very interesting question about where is going to happen to have AWS region for Peru.
That's a really interesting question.
Not office, right? Not office. A region.
No. I don't actually have a schedule to give out of new regions, but one thing I can tell you a couple things. We've been adding additional regions very quickly. We've been announcing, I think, probably 2 or 3 new regions per year. We're very conscious of where the customers and where our customers will be. So we continue to expand. If you look at some of the things that we've done in the last year or two, you will see we're trying to figure out ways to effectively get more compute closer to our users. So the first thing that we've done is called local zones. So with the local zones, we effectively create an AWS availability zone that is in some particular location, but it's connected to a region somewhere else. So within the US, we created our first local zone in Los Angeles. And so that was to be that was for the unique needs of the media and entertainment business in Los Angeles. That model was very successful, and we announced that we'll be opening up additional local zones in other parts of the US. Now we always start here, and then we branch out to the rest of the world. So I can't predict, I can't promise, but we will grow over time. The other thing that we do is we have an offering called Wavelength Zones. So with the Wavelength Zones, we've been working with the providers of 5G telecom to put compute and storage in the 5G telecom providers. Again, we've done, let's see, we've got over 10 of those in the US. We've got one in South Korea. We've got another one in Japan. So none of this is specific to Peru or to Latin America, but all of this is to kind of show the pattern and show that we're trying hard to get more compute and more storage out closer and closer to users over time.
That's great. That's great. I hope we have some wavelength zones or log zones here in Peru, maybe in Cusco. Will be awesome, dreams maybe come true sometime.
They often do.
So that's great. We have a lot of, I don't know, we have a lot of questions here, but I want to just close this discussion with you, Jeff, with one question about building your path for education. So you tell us about it, that you take a long years, 10 years actually, you said, to grow your AWS news blog from the beginning to actually success. I don't know if after 10 years you have the real success of between those times, what are the most challenging things that you find or you found in the initial part, in the starting point of doing AWS News Blog, that can help us to be more better evangelists in this community, and maybe that advice can help us to.
Sure. So oftentimes when you start something new, everybody else looks at you as like, oh, why are you bothering to do that? Or that doesn't matter, or you're kind of crazy. What's the use of doing this? That's often some good feedback that you're doing the right thing. When people are kind of like trying to tell you that it makes no sense, that often means that you have a little bit better understanding of the future and of what the world needs than they do. And sometimes when people try to take your ideas away from you, there's a little bit of jealousy involved. So when you've got that great idea, you need to pursue it. Of course, check it along the way to make sure that you're meeting customer needs. But you sometimes have to do things even when people are saying not sure that's the right thing or not sure that's going to work.
Great. That's awesome. That's awesome to know that. Well, I think yeah. Okay, I'm not muted, right? Okay. That's okay, Jeff. It's awesome to have you here. Awesome to have you all this advice, this great advice that you have. We have a lot of questions, but we don't have time to have everything. I would love to have you here and talking about Raul long hours about this, because
what makes that happen?
Because it's awesome to have your experience that you have in AWS about building communities, and we passed the last 6 or 7 years. Maybe it's not too much, but we passed some difficult times here in the community also. From the beginning, we have, for example, Raul and I, in the first 4 years of doing the community, we were just the two of us. So after 5 years or more, I think we started to grow the community and more people get interested in involving that. So maybe with what you just told us today, we can find more motivation for everybody to keep doing community, knowing that we don't have anything back, just educate and share our knowledge and having fun. That's awesome. So that's something that really inspires us from you. So I'm really pleased to have you here, Jeff, and share.
Right. I really appreciate the invite. I hope this was a great use of your time. Wish you all the very, very best for your event and for your future. Keep in touch. Let me know how things go, and we will see you all in person sometime. I want to make that happen.
Great, Jeff. Have a great day, and thank you very much for being here in AWS User Group Peru.
Will do. Viva Peru.
Viva Peru. Ciao, ciao.
Bye-bye.
Raúl. Ciao, Jeff.